welcome back to Jess Makes Stuff. Glad to see you here. Today we're talking about finished objects, works in progress, and some new yarn acquisitions. The first thing I wanted to show you today is my finished object for this week. I have been working on the Granite Cardigan from this book by Kim Hargreaves. Although I've made quite a lot of alterations to the pattern, I've been very pleased with how it came out. So here it is. This has been a great project to work on. I have enjoyed, not every minute, because there were some moments where I did find the pattern a little bit difficult to understand exactly what the instructions were getting at, but I have enjoyed working with the yarn. I've enjoyed doing this ribbing pattern. Yeah, I really like it. I've worn it quite a lot since it was finished earlier this week. I have in fact worn it out as outerwear instead of my coat because it's made in the Rowan Alpaca Soft DK. So the mix of wool and alpaca does mean that it's a very warm garment. It's been very comfortable. It's very soft. I do know that this yarn doesn't necessarily hold up the best to a lot of wear. I don't know exactly why that is, but it will bobble eventually with a lot of wear, but for the moment it looks great, and I expect I have plenty of time before the yarn starts to look a bit worn. I only say that because I know there are a lot of jumpers that have been made by previous generations that they make a jumper and it continues to look good for 50 years or even longer, and it will be made with a pure wool, and it doesn't have the same kind of wear issues that modern garments are prone to. So I do know that this yarn will stop looking so nice after a while, but I should have plenty of wears out of it before it starts to look a bit bobbled. Because my husband does have a jumper that's made in the same yarn, and he has found that it has started to look a bit worn in spite of only having had it for a year. So definitely something to think about with these very soft merino alpaca blends. They aren't something that can necessarily become an heirloom piece in a way that a pure wool piece can. However, that is not to say that there's anything wrong with it. It is, of course, a beautiful piece. It's lovely to wear. It's very warm, warmer than my plain merino wool. So I'm very pleased with that cardigan. The only other thing that I have that's kind of finished is this. And I say kind of finished because ultimately I've only finished one sock. I do need to finish the other one, but I do have one complete sock of this stripy sock that I've been working on. I need to cast on the other one so that I can have a complete pair. And I will get around to that soon, hopefully. It doesn't take very long to knit a single sock, so hopefully I will have the motivation to get around to that pretty quickly. Another work in progress that I had mentioned on the last podcast was the Hoppy Time blanket. Now, I've kind of had this on the back burner for a long time, and I finally got around to knitting another square. And it's only one square, but I do really like this pattern. Let me hold it up the right direction. So it is just a diamond purl bump pattern. But I really enjoy the way that this looks. I would actually consider using this kind of purl bump pattern in diamonds to make an entire garment, because I think that texture looks really nice and it would be really nice as an entire garment. So that's something that I have been thinking about since knitting this yesterday. I do have one other work in progress, but I don't think that I should talk about it until I talk about my yarn acquisitions from this past week. Now, if you watched my last podcast, I did talk about the fact that I have a lot of yarn. I don't really want to acquire a lot more yarn, but I also am a sucker for good deals, for clearance yarn, as it were. And it would be just our luck that we went into the yarn shop on Saturday and the owner is clearing out an entire line of yarn that is quite a well-known brand. And she was getting rid of it for probably about what it cost her to bring the line into the shop, which meant that we were able to pick up quite a lot of yarn at a really, really good price. Normally the yarn in question is about £5 a ball for a 50-gram ball of merino wool, but we were able to pick it up for £2 a ball, which obviously I could not pass that up. The yarn in question is Rico Essentials Merino DK, which you can see we were able to pick up a couple balls in this lovely green color. And actually this green goes with this darker gray to make a colorwork jumper for one of my sons. We had the kids with us, and when we saw the price of this yarn and the fact that it's superwash merino, we did think this is the perfect opportunity to make the kids some merino wool jumpers, which are of course much warmer than acrylic, but normally are far more expensive. So we thought, let's just let the kids select some colors that they like, and at that price, we will just knit them up a jumper in whatever they pick out. And then they will have something nice and warm that they can wear in the cold weather, either this winter or next winter. And so one of my sons selected this green and gray combination, which I think will make a fantastic jumper. I personally would wear the jumper that he has requested. I love these colors. I love the combination. I think it's great. This is the color selection that my daughter made. We've got kind of a mid pink, I would say, and then a lighter, almost khaki pink. It's very hard to tell whether that is a khaki or a pink, a beige or pink, when it's next to the pink, because I just can't tell. And then this mustard yellow. And we have kind of a colorwork pattern in mind for that, with the pink as the main color. Now, my youngest is enthusiastic about color, and this is the color combination that he chose to make a jumper for him. So we have mustard yellow and a very red. It's perhaps a little on the orange side, but it's a very red and pink. He loves colors and he has chosen these to make a jumper. I'm sure I will figure something out. It's not something that I would have picked myself, but I'm sure we can make something that will be wearable, ready for probably next winter. And of course, seeing this yarn on such a good deal, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to pick some out for myself, especially when I saw this color. This is the brick red, and I love it. It's a little bit on the burgundy side of red, which is great for me. I love that. But she only had 5 balls of this, and she had 5 balls of black. And I knew looking at them that I wanted to make a jumper in this color. This is the same color as a jumper that I had made when I very first started knitting, but I made it in acrylic, and I've been desperate to remake it in merino wool so that it would be more wearable for me. So I've just been looking out for this color, and fantastic to find it at such a good deal. But there were only 5 balls. So when we were standing in the shop, we did say, let's just get them and we will order some more online. The issue with that, of course, is that other places do not have such a good deal on that yarn as she did in store. We were able to find another local yarn store, so not a big place like Wool Warehouse, but just a local shop that had that color in stock for a reasonable price. It was about £5 a ball, or $4.50 maybe. So with shipping, it still has come out to far less than I would have paid to get all of the yarn for that jumper full price. So I was very pleased with that. On the other hand, I've also been on the lookout for merino wool in black because I wanted to make probably a 3/4 sleeve black jumper. Just something very basic, something very wearable. And she had black, so we picked that up and said, I only need a couple more balls of this. It should be fine if we just order it online. Only to come home and find, as we were browsing online, that the black had either already sold out in the places that we would plan to buy it, or it was much more expensive, like surprisingly so. The difference in cost between the red that we ordered from the other online store and the black that I had to order from one of the larger yarn distribution companies was about £2 a ball, which when you're only looking at something that's on average £5 a ball, that's a pretty big difference in the price, especially when we then had to pay shipping on top of that because we only needed a couple balls of yarn. So it didn't turn out to be such a good deal on the black when we got everything totaled up for the 5 balls that we bought in store that only cost £10, and the 2 balls that I had to order online that cost like £16. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. Overall, we've still made, it's still a good deal, still a good choice to have bought that, but it was not as good a deal as it would have been if she'd had as much black as I needed in the shop. But the reason I haven't held up the black to show you is that I have actually already started using it to make my newest work in progress, which is here. I realize I am wearing a black top and I'm trying to show you black, but it's black. Look, it's fabric. I'm knitting it. We have this lovely black yarn, nice and simple, nothing too crazy about that. But I am enjoying knitting on this, the Rico Essentials Merino DK. I have not worked with Rico yarn before. I've worked with Rico Rumi, of course. I mean, everybody does at some point, I think, in their fibercraft career, but I had not actually bought the main brand Rico. So this is a first time. I think it works up really nicely. It's not the softest yarn in the world, but I think that's kind of to be expected from something that's not a luxury yarn. It is a pure wool yarn, and it's kind of in the middle of the price range. But when I mentioned about this cardigan that I've just finished, probably wearing out more quickly than something that is in a pure wool, this is what I was comparing it to. This feels like it will be a much more hard-wearing yarn. It's probably not going to bobble in the same way, just based on the way that it's knitting up and the fact that I'm not getting any like fluffy bits coming off of it yet, which obviously when you're working with alpaca, there's quite a lot of fiber that can shed as you're knitting it, and I find that like if I were to wear this cardigan now, it would shed all over my black jumper. So that is one of the reasons I say this is likely to be less hard wearing. And again, not a complaint, just a comment for my own awareness. What the yarn behaves like when you're knitting it is often a very good indication of what it's going to be like as a worn garment. And this Rico Essentials Merino has been very sturdy to work with so far. Obviously, I'm not that far into my project. I'm only, well, that far. But it does feel as if it's going to be a nice sturdy project. It's knitting up softer than it feels on the ball, probably softer than I would have expected based on how it feels in the ball. And this project is going to be a fitted black jumper with hopefully quite a wide V-neck. I say hopefully because I'm not using a commercial pattern. I'm not using even an indie pattern. I am just making this up as I go along. And when I make things up, when I make a pattern for myself, usually that's done with a lot of referencing other patterns that I have either made up myself or made for myself using a commercial pattern. So I will reference the stitch counts and needle size for a similar garment in a similar fit that I have made before, so that I know what the fit is like, I know how that weight of yarn works up, and that has usually given me quite good results in the past. So I have worked using a pattern that I already had as a basis for my stitch counts, and then kind of just held this up as I was working on it, because I am starting with going shoulder to shoulder across the back and knitting down, and then I will pick up the stitches for the fronts and then join it at the underarm to work in the round down from there. And then I'm hoping that if I get the fit right, I will do shaped sleeves. So it should be a nice project to work on. It's working up very quickly, but creating my own pattern is always very much a question of just try it and see. Take what you know and work from there and hope for the best. So that is where I am going with this black jumper. And that's all from me this week. I hope you have had a great week and that you continue to have a wonderful time with your own creating process. I love the process of creating beautiful things, and I'm glad to be able to share it with you on this podcast. Have a great week. I'll see you later.